Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. My name's Anne, but I also go by my nickname Mimi. I like to focus on Midwest true crime because I'm a Minnesota farmer's daughter. Today we're going to go to Michigan and talk about a woman named Rose Verez. I don't know if I'm pronouncing her last name correctly, so I do apologize if I am saying that wrong. This was requested by CJB, so thank you very much for that suggestion. This is an interesting one. Rose was either the murderer of one person, a serial killer, a witch, or completely innocent. Rose Verez was born as Roselia Sebastian, I probably butchered that, on December 26, 1877 in Hungary. She married a man named Martin, and then he decided to immigrate to the United States for a better life, which is what a lot of people did during this time. He left Rose behind in Hungary. I don't know if the plan was to join him later after he got settled in the United States or what. But after Martin got settled in Detroit, Michigan, Rose stopped hearing from her husband. So she got on a boat and headed to Detroit. Apparently, when she got to Detroit, she found Martin alive and well and with another woman. They divorced and Rose stayed in Detroit. She moved on to the Delray neighborhood. It had a large Hungarian population, which was very helpful because Rose spoke very little English. She married a Hungarian man named Gabor Verez. They established a boarding house in their home on 7894 Medina Street, and they eventually had 3 sons. In the mid-1920s, Rose was arrested over the deaths of 2 of her boarders. Police didn't have enough evidence to officially charge her with murder, so she was let go. In 1927, Gabor was working on a car in their garage and died from carbon monoxide poisoning. It was ruled an accidental death, but a lot of people today wonder if Gabor might have been one of Rose's victims. Rose was now a 50-year-old widow, managing the boarding house on her own and a single mom to 3 sons. When the Great Depression hit in 1929, it caused a lot of people to suffer financially and go through a lot of hardships. The stress definitely showed on Rose's appearance. She looked much older than her actual age. Her skin looks worn. Her eyes were a very pale blue. It didn't help that she wore very tight bonnets and was rarely seen smiling. Rumors started spreading around Delray that Rose was a witch. This could be due to her appearance, but it was also partly due to the fact that a lot of her boarders were men who had left their wives. People started speculating that Rose had cast spells on these men to get them to leave their wives and come to her. There was also some weird activity going on in the boarding house. By the summer of 1931, 11 of Rose's boarders had died. Some deaths were ruled due to alcohol poisoning or cirrhosis. Some men appeared to have hung themselves. Considering the socioeconomic struggles of the time, Great Depression era Detroit, those causes are easy to believe. People coped with hardships by drinking, and for some the burden was too heavy, so they did take their own lives. So a few of those deaths at one time in itself is not too alarming, but by the time the number of men who had died in Rose's house reached 11, people were definitely talking. It was apparently even mentioned in newspapers around the country about the mysterious deaths in the boarding house. One of Rose's boarders was a man named Steve Mack. Some things I read said he was in his 50s, some said he was in his 60s. On a hot summer day on August 23, 1931, Steve was rushed to the hospital after he fell out an attic window at Rose's house. When police talked to Rose, she said she hadn't been home at the time, but she told them she had asked Steve to repair the attic window. Police did find a ladder against the house and also some tools on the ground. Police started to hear about all the other mysterious deaths that had happened in Rose's house. They also heard the rumors that she might be a witch. They also found out that Rose had taken out 2 life insurance policies on Steve that totaled about $5,200, which today would be about $95,000. One of Rose's other boarders, a man named John Walker, told police that he had seen Rose and her 18-year-old son William beat up Steve and then throw him out the window. John claimed that Rose paid him about $500 to keep his mouth shut. There wasn't a lot of physical evidence that pointed to Rose and William being responsible for Steve's death. The attic was very dusty, and there weren't any drag marks or signs of a scuffle in that dust. I am curious if Steve had any bruises that couldn't be explained by falling out the window, because those bruises could have backed up John Walker's story that Rose and William had beat him up before throwing him out the window. Police pretty much only had witness testimony to rely on. John Walker wasn't the only witness. One of Rose's friends apparently said Rose had told her that she had tried to poison Steve, and that didn't work, so she threw him out the window. A neighbor named Bessie Hill said that after Steve had fallen out the window, Rose had come over to her house. She looked disheveled, and she asked for a towel to wash her hands and face. 11-year-old Marie Chavala lived across the street from Rose and had been playing in her front lawn. She said she saw Rose and William throw Steve out the window. On September 1st, 1931, Rose and William were arrested and charged with murdering Steve Mack. Rose and William pled not guilty. It's thought one reason police thought William was involved was because it was hard to believe that a woman could throw an adult man out the window. Rose was small, thought to be about 5'3" and around 120 pounds. She most likely had a lot of muscle strength from years of doing hard labor, but some still doubted that she would have the strength to carry a man who was bigger than her through the attic and out the window. John Whitman was the lead detective on Steve Mack's murder case, and he apparently did not like how the prosecution was building their case against Rose and William. Some of the local newspapers reported Rose had made a full confession and that she had told police there were 2 other men who were responsible for Steve's death, but no confession was ever mentioned during the trial, and no other men were ever officially named. Rose and William were tried together, and their trial began on October 1st, 1931. The state claimed that they had tried to poison Steve, and that didn't work, so then they beat him up and then threw him out the window. Their motive was to kill him to get his life insurance money. They showed the court the life insurance policies that Rose had taken out on Steve. They also showed evidence that she had taken out life insurance policies on 75 previous boarders. All of the witnesses, including 11-year-old Marie Chavala, testified about what they saw that day. Rose's defense lawyer, Frank M. Kenny Jr., claimed Steve had accidentally fallen. He said it was common for people who ran boarding houses to take life insurance policies out on their boarders. He mentioned that most of Rose's boarders were immigrants whose families were back in their home countries, so it was common for them to assign insurance policies to people other than family, just to ensure that if something happened to them, there'd be enough money for a proper burial. A psychological evaluation on Rose declared her, quote, not insane, but a very dangerous woman, unquote. A psychological evaluation on William said he had an IQ of only 53 and the mindset of an 8-year-old. So they said he was probably heavily influenced by his mother. The jury deliberated and went back and forth for quite a while because they couldn't agree on a verdict. On October 5th, 1931, both Rose and William were found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. Rose was sent off to a women's prison and William was sent off to a men's prison. Flash forward several years later, and in the 1940s, a huge sting operation revealed political corruption in Detroit. The scandal involved around 100 people, including the mayor and the sheriff, and Duncan McCrae. He had been the assistant prosecutor during Rose and William's trial. He was elected prosecutor of Wayne County in 1935 and immediately took bribes and did all kinds of shady crap. For his crimes, Duncan was sent to the men's prison in Jackson, which ironically was the same prison William Verries was being held at. Duncan tracked William down in the prison and told him that he had not been given a fair trial. It's not quite sure why Duncan did this. Some wonder if maybe he was trying to make amends for his other crimes. But Duncan told William that he should try to get a new trial. Meanwhile, Rose's middle son, Gaber, had been fighting ever since the trial to find a way to prove his mother and brother innocent. He had been around 15 at the time of the trial. He heard of a female attorney named Aline B. Cutts. She had a reputation of being an avenging angel and took on hard luck cases. She was very successful at getting people out of jail or getting them new trials. Aline took on Rose and William's case. She pored over the evidence, interviewed several people. She talked extensively with Rose and William to get their side of the story. When they went to request a new trial for William in 1944, the prosecutor actually determined that 13 years in prison was enough for William. He dismissed his charges and he was set free. That fall, Rose and Eileen filed a motion for a new trial for Rose, and it was granted. One reason for this was because of Rose's limited understanding of the English language. Because she mostly spoke Hungarian and very little English, it is very likely that she fully didn't understand everything that happened during the arrest and trial. Also, Rose's original lawyer hadn't been the best. Frank Kenny was a fairly new lawyer, and he'd never handled a case with as much attention as Rose's. The prosecutors were more seasoned, and they knew how to talk to jurors and pull them in. Rose's lawyer didn't even object to the term the Witch of Delray from being used in the courtroom. He didn't let Rose or William testify, which I don't think is too uncommon, especially in murder cases, but I could see how in this one it could negatively impact them. Rose had such a stern, stoic face, not friendly at all. So since the jury didn't get to hear her own words, even through an interpreter, her sitting there looking so serious in court is the only impression they got of her. They also got to hear about her reputation of being a witch. So the jury very much could have been biased. Rose's second trial started in November of 1945. John Walker and Maria Chavala gave the same testimonies they had at the first trial. Bessie Hill, however, changed her story, and she denied that Rose had ever come to her house looking disheveled after Steve had fallen. Rose used an interpreter and testified and told her side of the story in court. Eileen was able to poke a lot of holes in the prosecutor's evidence. She had experts testify how it was physically impossible for Rose and William to have thrown Steve out the window because it was so small. She brought the jury to the house so they could see firsthand what the window looked like. She also brought them up into the attic and showed them the floor, which was an open joist floor, so it would have been very difficult to carry someone across it to the window. The jury came to a rather quick decision this time, and on December 11th, 1945, Rose was found not guilty. She had spent 14 years in prison and was now a free woman. Rose was in her mid-60s when she was let out of prison. She and her sons moved out of Delray and into a different suburb, but she'd often go back to visit friends. Rose and William tried to live a normal, quiet life. William went to work and Rose was basically retired now. She enjoyed spending time with her sons. She was also now a grandmother, so she spent a lot of time with her grandchildren. She'd knit and play bingo. On August 14th, 1960, Rose died at the age of 82. She is buried in Woodmere Cemetery in Detroit next to her second husband. Her legend still lives on in Detroit. The place where her boarding house stood is part of history tours. Some bars have named drinks after her. Due to the witch aspect of her case, she's brought up a lot around Halloween. I think a lot of circumstantial evidence points to Rose being a serial killer. Even considering the hard times of the 1920s and 1930s, that is a lot of men to die in the same house within a span of about 10 years. Money is often a very common motive to commit murder, and this was the Great Depression. Desperate times call for desperate measures. At the same time, though, I can see how her reputation and the rumors about her being a witch could have impacted people and the jury to find her guilty when she was really innocent. I don't know, in the eyes of the law, she is innocent of Steve Mack's death, but you do have to wonder about all the other men who died in her home. It is unfortunate if she is innocent of all the deaths. 14 years of her life were robbed from her while she sat in prison. Her legacy is tainted because everyone still refers to her as the Witch of Delray, when she really could have just been an innocent little Hungarian lady. That's all I have for this case. I'd love to hear your thoughts below, especially if you think Rose is a witch or a murderer or completely innocent. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.